Claire Dawson opened her sock drawer at 3 in the morning, when Atlanta was still lying under the pale blue light of a city that had just begun to wake, but had not yet grown noisy. And her small apartment on the 12th floor was still so dim that the diamond inside the dark blue velvet box looked like a trapped piece of starlight at the bottom of the sea. The coffee maker dripped steadily in the kitchen. The old air conditioner breathed out a thin stream of cold air. And on the vanity sat the silver earrings she had chosen the night before for work, placed beside her employee badge from the Bellamy Hotel and a nearly finished tube of dusty rose lipstick. Claire stood barefoot in front of the drawer, wearing a gray robe, her hair still tangled, her fingers resting on the edge of the ring box but not opening it yet. As if one firmer touch might shatter the tender lie she had spent the past 3 weeks building around herself. 3 weeks earlier, Adrian Whitmore had knelt in front of her in the highest suite of the hotel, surrounded by white flowers, candles, champagne, and a city glowing beneath the glass windows like a golden ocean, and had offered her this ring with eyes that were truly wet. He had told her she was the only place where he could breathe, that before her his life had been nothing but schedules, obligations, family dinners that stretched on like sentences, rooms where no one asked whether he was happy, but only which investment fund was rising. He had told her he loved her in the voice of a man who was exhausted from being strong in the exact way other people require. The ring was real. The diamond was real. The way his hand trembled when he held hers was real too. That morning, the ring was still lying in her sock drawer, beneath an old silk scarf, because the message Adrian had sent at 12:18 the night before was still burning in her mind like words carved into skin. Tonight is complicated. Please trust me. Wear the ring only when it's just us for now. Tonight is complicated. Trust me. Wear the ring only when it is just the two of us for now. Claire opened the box. The diamond caught the faint light from the window and flashed coldly. She had once believed an engagement ring was something that brought a woman into the light. A small but public sign that a love story now had a name, a direction, a future that had been acknowledged. And yet her ring felt more like evidence than a promise. Something so beautiful it could not be denied, but forced to live in the dark like stolen property. She held out her left hand and looked at her bare ring finger. There was still the faintest mark on her skin from the night before, when she had worn it in the apartment after Adrian stopped by following a dinner with clients. And during those 2 brief hours, he had held her hand, kissed the ring, and called her my fiancée in a low voice that sounded like a confession. But before he left, he had stood at the door, his hand resting on the back of her neck, his expression so pained that Claire had wanted to comfort him before she had time to be angry. Just a little longer, he had said. I need to choose the right moment. You don't know what my mother will do if she finds out before the gala. She'll turn it into a war, and I don't want them to make our moment ugly. Back then, Claire had nodded. She had nodded so many times in the 2 years. She had loved him that her neck seemed to have learned its own language of endurance. That morning, she took the ring out of the box, slipped it onto her finger, looked at it in the mirror, looked at her own face above the gray robe, her tired brown eyes, her lips without lipstick. The woman who had been proposed to but still had to check her fiancé's family social calendar before she was allowed to wear the proof of love. Then she took it off, placed it back in the box, and pushed it deep beneath the neatly rolled black socks. The drawer closed with a very small sound, but in the quiet room, it felt like a door being locked from the outside. The Bellamy was the kind of hotel people chose when they wanted to prove their lives were worth remembering. The lobby was paved in cream-colored marble. The ceilings were high and hung with crystal chandeliers. Fresh flowers were replaced every morning, and the staff stood so straight it was as if even their posture belonged to the brand. Claire had worked there for 8 years, moving from assistant coordinator to event manager, and she understood the hotel the way one understands the heartbeat of someone close. She knew which ballroom had the best acoustics for weddings under 200 guests, which side entrance could bring a bride in without her dress dragging over the red carpet, which chef was likely to lose his temper if the menu changed at the last minute, which wealthy families always said, nothing too extravagant, and then demanded orchids flown in from the Netherlands on the exact day of a storm. She was so good that people often forgot how heavy that kind of competence was. They only saw the lights turning on at the right time, the flowers placed at the right angle, the champagne chilled to the proper temperature, the bride entering on the right beat of the music, the groom never knowing the microphone had failed 4 minutes earlier, The mother of the bride, never knowing Claire, had just stood in the linen sea, Luzette trying to breathe, because a bridesmaid had cried mascara onto a rented silk gown. Claire was the person who turned chaos into beauty for other people. She stood behind the lights, behind the curtains, behind the event headset, behind the composed smile, so other people's happiness could appear seamless. Perhaps that was why her own humiliation hurt in such a particular way. She had spent her life bringing couples into the open, letting people applaud when their names were called together, while her own love had no place on any seating chart. That afternoon, the Bellamy had a wedding in the South Ballroom. The young bride, blonde hair pinned low, cried when she saw the completed room. Claire stood by the door, headset on her left ear, clipboard in her right hand, smiling just enough not to take anything away from the moment. When the MC introduced the bride and groom, the whole room rose to applaud. The young man took his wife's hand and lifted it high, and the bride's ring caught the candlelight, not as large as Claire's, not as coldly sharp, not as perfect, but it was seen. Claire lifted a hand to adjust her headset and unconsciously touched her empty ring finger. A tightness rose into her throat so quickly that she had to turn toward the technical table as if she were checking the lighting. Maya Brooks, the hotel's lead bartender and Claire's closest friend, saw everything. Maya had sharp eyes, shoulder-length black hair, and the ability to hear falsehood in rich people's voices the way other people heard a crack in glass. She set a glass of ice water on the service table as Claire passed. "Drink," Maya said. "You're looking at the bride's ring like it's evidence from a crime scene." Claire took the glass and drank. "I'm fine," Maya raised an eyebrow. "That sentence is banned here, especially when the person saying it just got proposed to and still has to leave the ring at home." Claire looked around and lowered her voice. "Not at home. In the drawer." "Ah," Maya said dryly. "So you're not engaged. You're hiding evidence?" Claire wanted to laugh to soften the line, but she could not. Maya watched her a little longer, her voice gentler but not softer. "Claire, if a man proposed to you, why does the ring have to live in a drawer?" Claire did not answer right away. She looked past Maya's shoulder, where the bride was resting her forehead against the groom's shoulder during their first dance, the entire room watching them with a tenderness that needed no permission. "He says his family is complicated," Claire said at last. "Every family is complicated, but not every woman gets turned into a secret because of that complication." Claire had grown up in a house with very little to show off. Her mother, Denise Dawson, sewed from home, altered wedding dresses, took in evening gowns at the waist, replaced zippers for women who could pay on time but still spoke to her as if their kindness were part of the bill. Claire's father had left when she was 3, leaving behind a few blurry photographs, a small debt, and a silence Denise never explained too much. Claire grew up beside the sound of the sewing machine late at night, beside spools of thread, beside scraps of fabric prettier than the clothes she wore to school. She had watched her mother stand behind wealthy brides, fastening hooks, smoothing layers of lace, then stepping out of the frame before the camera flashed. Denise always said, "My job is to help other people walk into the room feeling confident." But from the time Claire was small, she understood something else. Some women spent their whole lives making the door beautiful for rooms they were never invited to enter. She had promised herself she would not be like that. She studied hard, earned small scholarships, worked as a server at weddings, climbed one step at a time through the hotel industry, trained herself to speak in a voice soft enough that guests did not feel challenged, but firm enough that staff knew she was in charge. She knew she had not been born inside a beautiful room, but she had learned how to command one through skill. What she had not expected was that a woman could become exceptional at building stages for other people, and still, when she loved the wrong man, be pushed behind the curtain with very gentle words. The proposal had been too beautiful for Claire to believe it could be the beginning of a cage. Adrian had chosen the highest suite at the Bellamy on a Wednesday night, after she had finished a 3-day conference. She thought he simply wanted to help her relax. He told her to wear the black dress she liked, nothing too formal, and took her up in the private elevator. When the doors opened, the room had been covered in white candlelight and peonies, the kind of flowers she had once said were beautiful but wilted too easily, like romantic things that could only survive at the right temperature. On the table were champagne, strawberries, and a small cheese plate because Adrian knew she often forgot to eat on event day. Beyond the windows, Atlanta glowed. Claire had laughed because she thought he was making up for canceling dinner twice that month. Then he took her hand. His face no longer held the clean confidence of a financial advisor who always wore perfectly fitted suits. and knew every name in the room. He looked afraid, truly afraid. "Claire," he said, and the way he said her name made her go still. "I have spent 38 years being taught to enter the right room, say the right thing, stand beside the right person. Then I met you in a staff hallway with a radio in your ear and a hair clip between your teeth, scolding a flower vendor for bringing orchids in the wrong shade. And I thought that for the first time in my life, I was seeing a woman who made everything more real, not just more beautiful." Claire remembered laughing through tears at that. He knelt. The velvet box opened. "I don't want to spend the rest of my life being right in front of other people. I want to be real with you. Marry me." There had been nothing false in that moment. If there had been, Claire would not have hurt for so long. She had said yes. He had placed the ring on her finger. They had kissed with the city humming far below. And she thought that finally all the waiting, all the canceled dinners, all the not yet, had led to an open door. But only 10 minutes later, when she wiped her tears and picked up her phone to send a picture of the ring to her mother, Adrian gently caught her wrist. The gesture was not forceful, not rough, but it sent a cold line through the joy evaporating inside her. "Wait," he said. "I want to keep this moment just ours for a little while." Claire looked at him. "I'm only sending it to my mother." "I know, and I want your mother to know. I really do. It's just my family. If this gets out before I speak to them the right way, they'll attack. My mother will call. My father will drag the company into it. Savannah will turn into a room full of people speaking for us. I want to protect this." The word protect softened her, because Adrian said it like someone who had been crushed by his family for years. She knew a few things about the Whitmores. Old money in Savannah, names on hospitals, scholarships, investment funds, dinners where marriages were weighed like stocks. She knew Adrian hated being called the Whitmore heir, but still answered every time his mother called. She knew he had once told her that in his family, love was only accepted if it did not ruin the Christmas photograph. So that night, Claire blamed herself for being too eager. She thought privacy was not the same thing as secrecy. She thought a beautiful moment sometimes needed to be kept safe from rough hands. She did not know that some cages were made from very soft words, and protecting us was the first bar. 2 years earlier, their love had begun backstage, and that had once made it feel romantic. Adrian came to the Bellamy for a finance event hosted by a Southern investment fund. The kind of gathering where men in tuxedos spoke about ethical business before whispering about profit margins in elevators. The ballroom lighting system failed 12 minutes before the keynote. Claire, dressed in a black suit, hair pinned low, headset over one ear, was directing a technician to swap the control board while calmly managing a PR director who looked ready to cry. Adrian stood near the door and watched her save the entire program without raising her voice. After the event, he found her in the staff hallway, where she had taken off one high heel to inspect a blister on her heel. He handed her a bottle of water. "I've seen CEOs panic over microphone feedback," he said. "You handle a crisis better than my board of directors." Claire laughed because the compliment was clever without being too polished. They talked in the hallway, then later in service elevators, at late-night diners after events, at the bar after guests had gone upstairs. Adrian liked places where no one from his world could see him. He said he hated the ballroom after the lights came on, hated rooms where people asked about his father before they asked about him. Claire felt special because he did not perform in front of her. He loosened his tie, drank black coffee from a staff paper cup, told her about his mother, Eleanor, a woman who could make a room go silent simply by setting down a glass. He told her about Savannah, about long dinners, about Victoria Langley, the daughter of a major partner, as someone from the family orbit rather than a threat. "She understands the game," he said once, "but I'm tired of the game." Claire heard that like a choice, even though he had never said it publicly. The first sign was too small to be called a crack. At another event, a colleague asked Adrian if he was dating anyone. He glanced briefly at Claire, who was standing behind the coordination table, then smiled and answered, "Nothing public. Nothing public." Everyone laughed. Claire laughed too, thinking it was a private joke between them. Later, she would realize that the entire structure of their relationship was inside that sentence. Not nothing, but nothing public. He was not lying completely. He was simply placing the truth in a room with no windows. 2 years of love were 2 years in which Claire learned to live in half-light. Adrian loved her tenderly when no one was watching. He came to her apartment after long workdays, rolled up his sleeves and made pasta, fixed the leak beneath her kitchen sink, remembered that Denise Dawson, her mother, preferred mint tea to black tea, New Claire got headaches after events with loud live music and always carried painkillers in his pocket. He sat on her living room floor folding sample napkins for a wedding, laughing when she corrected the angle of his fold because symmetry will ruin the whole mood board. He held her in the dark after family dinners in Savannah where he came back late, pressing his face into her neck and saying, "You are the only place where I don't have to be a Whitmore." Those words softened Claire because she had her own wound. Her mother was a seamstress who worked from home, raised her alone after Claire's father left before she was old enough to remember his face. Denise had been looked at with polite pity, called that unfortunate woman in their old church, bargained down by clients dollar by dollar, and then praised for being so talented despite her circumstances. Claire had grown up with the feeling that there were rooms she and her mother could only enter through the back door. So when Adrian, a man from a world where front doors opened wide, said she was his home, she almost believed all those layers could dissolve before love. But Adrian's love, real as it was, always knew how to take shelter in her small apartment, while outside, when his world lit up, she disappeared. He did not take her to Savannah, did not post photographs, did not introduce her to Alina, did not bring her to his closest friends' parties. Every time Claire asked, he said, "I just need the right timing. You don't understand what they'll do. I'm protecting you. Don't let my family ruin something beautiful." Those sentences made her feel noble for being silent, mature for waiting, deeply loving for not demanding. The more understanding she became, the more invisible she became. Some nights Adrian slept on her sofa because he was too exhausted to drive home, his shirt unbuttoned at the collar, his hand still holding his phone as if he feared some family call might pull him out of sleep. Claire would look at him and tell herself that a man who did not love her would not come to her in this condition. But in the morning, when his phone lit up with a message from Alina reminding him about brunch in Savannah, he would sit up at once, kiss Claire's forehead, tell her he had to go, and she would be left in the apartment with the smell of cold coffee, while the man who had just called her home returned to another home, one she had never been invited to enter. Once Adrian promised to take her to Savannah for the weekend, saying he would introduce her to a close friend first. Just one small step, but a real step. Claire prepared for that trip for 3 days. She chose a simple cream dress, asked her mother if it was trying too hard, bought a small gift for the host, even stood in front of the mirror practicing how to speak to people she imagined would measure her from head to toe behind polite smile. The morning they were supposed to leave, Adrian called. His voice was tense. "My mother unexpectedly added a few people to dinner. Charles will be there, the Langleys, a major partner. It's not the right occasion anymore." Claire sat on the edge of the bed, the dress already hanging on the closet door. "The right occasion for whom?" He was silent for a few seconds. "For us." She looked at the dress, at the new shoes still stuffed with tissue paper. "Are you protecting me again? I'm trying to make sure the first time you meet them doesn't become an interrogation. Or are you trying to make sure they don't know I exist while Victoria is sitting there?" Adrian exhaled, tired. "Don't make her the issue. You know she's just part of my family's world." Claire wanted to ask, "Then what part am I?" But she did not ask. She hung the dress back up. That night, Adrian sent a photo of a wineglass on a dark wooden table with the message, "Wish you were here." Claire looked at the photo, zoomed in, and saw at the edge of the glass the reflection of a black dress and a hand wearing a pearl bracelet. She did not ask. Not asking began to become its own way of making herself disappear. Adrian Whitmore entered Claire's life like a woman who had mastered the art of turning politeness into the most refined form of control. It was at a charity exhibition at the Bellamy, where Adrian attended with his family while Claire worked as event manager. Adrian wore a pearl-colored silk dress, her silver hair cut short, her jewelry minimal but expensive, and her smile had a measured warmth, enough that no one could call her cold, not enough for anyone to forget they were being evaluated. Adrian was standing beside his mother when Claire approached to check the speaking schedule. He looked at her for 1 second, his eyes softening very quickly, then hardening again before Alina could notice. "Mother," he said, "this is Claire Dawson, the event manager at the Bellamy. She handled the entire setup tonight. Not his girlfriend, not the woman he loved, not the woman who had cooked with him 3 nights earlier." Claire felt a small drop inside her chest, but kept her professional smile. Alina extended a hand. "My son tells me you're very good at making a room look more expensive." Written down, the sentence might have looked like praise, but her tone placed Claire exactly where she wanted her. The person who made the room serve other people's value. Claire replied, "I try to make the room look true to its purpose. Eleanor smiled lightly. It must be interesting to see this world from behind the scenes. Adrian heard it. Claire knew he heard it, because his hand tightened around his champagne glass. But he did not correct her. He did not say, "Mother, Claire does not stand behind this world. She is the woman I love." He simply said nothing. That night, he came to Claire's apartment with white flowers and pain on his face. "My mother didn't mean it that way," he said. Claire stood by the kitchen, still in her black work dress, her feet aching from 12 hours of standing. "Didn't mean what?" "Didn't mean to make me sound like someone hired to polish the windows in her world." Adrian closed his eyes. "I know. I should have said something, but you didn't." He came closer and placed his hands on her shoulders. I froze in the moment. Everything happened so fast. Claire looked at his hands on her shoulders. This gesture had once made her feel love. That night, it felt like a bandage placed over a cut that had not been clean. "Everything always happens fast," she said. "So fast that you always manage to stay silent." Adrian's pain was real. But his pain did not change what had happened. Victoria Langley was not the kind of woman Claire could easily hate. That made everything harder. Victoria appeared at the same exhibition, wearing a simple black dress, brown hair tied low, no showy jewelry. Yet people automatically made room for her as if the room had been programmed to recognize her position. She knew Eleanor, knew the partners, knew the story about a senator who had just bought a house on Sea Island, knew where to laugh when someone told a weak joke. When Victoria asked Claire, "Do you usually do events for Adrian?" her voice was not contemptuous. She simply had no idea who Claire was beyond her role as hotel staff. Claire heard in that question a truth colder than any insult. She had loved Adrian for 2 years, and yet in his world, the appropriate woman who could stand beside him in the light did not even know she existed. That night, Adrian texted, "I hated seeing you treated like staff tonight." He hated seeing her treated like staff. Claire looked at the message while sitting on the edge of her bed, her feet soaking in warm water because they hurt. She wanted to write back, "I am staff there, but I am not your staff." She typed it and deleted it. In the end, she only wrote, "You stood there." Adrian replied a few minutes later, "I know. I'm sorry. I'll fix this. I'll fix this." That sentence would return again and again in her life, always in the future tense, always arriving after the present had already done the damage. In the weeks that followed, Claire began to hear Victoria's name in places it should not have been. In a society magazine left in the hotel lobby, Adrian appeared in a small photo beside Victoria at a dinner in Charleston, the caption saying the Whitmore and Langley families continued to strengthen the next generation of ties. In a missed call near midnight, Adrian said he was exhausted from having to sit beside Victoria all evening, then immediately told Claire not to misunderstand, "I just wanted to come home to you." That sentence had once warmed her. Over time, it became the coldest sentence of all. He could always come home to her after standing in the proper place with someone else. When Claire began to pull back, Adrian felt it. She answered his messages more slowly. She no longer canceled plans with Maya to see him at the last minute. She did not go to his apartment on nights when he needed her for a little while after family dinners. She said she was busy, and inside every busy was a sadness he was not used to being denied entry to. One evening, he came to the Bellamy without warning and stood in the staff hallway just as she had finished a 60th wedding anniversary party. "You're avoiding me," he said. Claire removed her headset, her neck aching after 14 hours on her feet. "I'm working, not just today. For weeks. Maybe I'm tired of being a person who doesn't exist." Adrian looked at her as if the sentence had offended him. "You exist with me, but I don't exist anywhere else." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I'm trying. You know I'm trying. I don't know anymore." That frightened him. She saw it clearly, and the following week, the proposal appeared. Later, what hurt Claire most was realizing it had not been false. Adrian had not proposed to deceive her in some crude way. He had proposed because he was afraid of losing her, because in the private room of his heart, she truly was the woman he wanted. But that proposal had also been a way to keep her in the waiting room. A beautiful ring placed on the hand of a woman who was already walking toward the door. It said, "I choose you." But immediately afterward, the requests to keep it hidden said, "Just don't make me prove it in front of anyone else." The ring became a two-faced object, a beautiful promise and a lock. Every time she opened the drawer, its light asked a question she did not want to hear. When a promise has to be hidden, is it protecting love, or protecting the person too afraid to live with that love? Denise Dawson was not dazzled by diamonds. Claire went to her mother's house on a Sunday afternoon, carrying the ring box in her purse like a heavy secret. Denise's small house smelled of new fabric, thread, mint tea, and lemon soap. The old sewing machine sat beside the window, and on the cabinet was a photo of Claire as a little girl in a white dress Denise had sewn herself, standing beside her mother at a school festival with no father in the picture. Claire had expected her mother to cry, to hug her, to say that finally her daughter had found happiness. But Denise opened the box, looked at the ring for a long time, then looked at her daughter. "It's beautiful," she said. "Very beautiful." Claire smiled nervously. "You're not happy." Denise closed the box, not harshly but firmly. "Are you allowed to wear it when you stand beside him?" Claire was silent. The question was so simple, there was nowhere to hide. "Just for now," she said. "His family is complicated. You don't know Adrian Whitmore. If they find out the wrong way." Denise cut in with a calm voice. "I know enough about rich people to know they like to give their cruelty pretty names. Complicated, legacy, protection, timing." Claire felt herself become defensive immediately, because if her mother was right, she would have to look directly at what love was covering. "Adrian isn't like them." Denise placed her hand on the ring box. "I'm not saying he is exactly like them. I'm asking whether you are allowed to exist beside him." Claire looked down at her hands. Denise's voice softened. "A ring does not make you a fiancé if you have to take it off so other people can stay comfortable. Don't let a man turn you into something he has to explain later." Claire left her mother's house at dusk, the ring box sitting in her purse like a stone. She was a little angry with Denise for not giving her one complete moment of joy. But like every true sentence, it did not leave simply because she did not want to hear it. On the drive home, Adrian called. She watched his name light up on the car screen. When she answered, he spoke in his gentlest voice. "Where are you? My mother's. Did you tell her?" Claire was silent for a beat too long. Adrian heard it. "Claire, you told me not to post pictures. You didn't tell me I couldn't tell my mother." "I know. I wanted to control the timing." "Of my mother, too," he exhaled. "You're turning this into a war." She laughed very softly. "No, I'm just realizing you called it love, but you manage it like a risk." Adrian was silent. Then he said, "I don't deserve for you to say that." That hurt Claire because part of her believed him. But another part of her, the part that had watched the drawer close that morning, knew that the man hurting her did not have to be a man who did not love her. That was the hardest part to live with. The Whitmore Gala was the largest event of the winter season at the Bellamy, a charity benefit for a Southern scholarship program, and at the same time, a social stage on which the Whitmore family could prove they were still an emblem of old money doing good works. Claire was responsible for everything. The main ballroom, cocktail reception, seating chart, sound, press photography, VIP movement flow, white orchids, low candlelight, a cream backdrop with the foundation logo. When she opened the VIP guest list, her eyes stopped at the central table. Adrian Whitmore, Victoria Langley, Adrian Whitmore, Charles Whitmore, the Langley family. Claire's name was nowhere, of course, because she was staff. But that obviousness was what hurt. Maya stood behind her, looking at the seating chart, then said, "You're building the stage for your fiancé to perform being single." Claire closed the file. "It's diplomacy. Adrian said he'll tell his family after the gala." Maya looked at her with a pity Claire hated because it was not cruel. "After the gala, after the party, after dinner, after his mother calms down, after the company stabilizes, after the world stops spinning. Do you hear yourself?" Claire turned around. "You think I don't know?" The sentence came out sharper than she intended. Maya went quiet. Claire lowered her voice. "I know it's ugly, but I also know him when it's just the two of us. I know he loves me." Maya placed a hand on the table slowly. "I'm not questioning whether he loves you. I'm afraid you're using that love to forgive every place where he does not choose you." Claire did not answer. She looked back at the seating chart, the small rectangles, the neatly printed names, the officially recognized position. Her life had been pushed outside by an Excel sheet. The larger crack appeared when Claire checked the media packet for the gala. In the photography schedule was a line. "Photo moment, Adrian Whitmore with Victoria Langley, future partnership announcement." She read it again and again. Future partnership. It was not clear whether it meant business or society, and that very ambiguity made it dangerous. She found Adrian in a small meeting room behind the ballroom, where he was looking at his phone. He wore a dark blue suit, his hair neat, his face tired but handsome in the way of a man who had never had to question whether he had the right to enter any room. Claire placed the printout on the table. "What is this?" Adrian looked down, his face changing very slightly. "A media note. I can read. I'm asking what it means." He exhaled. "Victoria and I are involved in a joint fund between the two families. They want a photo so the financial press has an angle. Future partnership announcement? It's work. Then why do I feel like your public story always has her at the center, while I have to keep my ring in a drawer? Adrian looked at her, his voice lowering. Claire, you don't understand my world. That sentence landed between them heavier than any direct insult. He did not call her beneath him. He did not say she was unsophisticated, not elegant enough, not suitable. But all of it was inside that sentence. You don't understand. You're outside. You're emotional. You don't know how this game works. Claire felt her face grow hot, not because she was ashamed in front of him, but because she recognized a version of something she had heard all her life. Her mother did not understand how respectable people behaved. Claire did not understand high society. Women like her should be grateful to be invited backstage. Then explain it to me, she said. In your world, where does your fiancé stand? Adrian was silent. No answer came quickly enough. The silence answered for him. He stepped closer, his voice softer. You're looking at everything as if I'm choosing her over you. Then what are you choosing? I'm choosing the way to keep us from being destroyed. By letting me be erased? You're not being erased. Claire laughed without humor. My name isn't on the list. I can't wear my ring. Your mother calls me an unapproved attachment. Victoria sits beside you. I work the floor, but I'm not being erased. Adrian looked at her as if she had gathered too many things into a weapon. You're not being fair. No, Claire said, and for the first time her voice did not shake. I'm adding the numbers. That's my job. The night before the gala, Jonah Reed accidentally pushed a piece of the truth into the light. Jonah was the Whitmore family's longtime driver. A man in his 60s with dark skin, silver hair cut close, and the calm stance of someone who had seen too many wealthy lives unravel in the backseat of a car, and knew how to keep his mouth shut. Claire met him in the parking area behind the Bellamy, while checking the VIP entrance. He was cleaning the windows of the Whitmore family's black car. Miss Dawson, he greeted her politely. Tomorrow you'll be working miracles again for people who like to think miracles are something they paid for. Claire laughed, tired. I'll try. Jonah watched her for a moment, as if he wanted to speak and then decided against it. You've driven for Adrian a long time, she asked, because the silence needed filling. Since he was in college, he gets carsick if he reads files in the backseat too long, but he still does it because he wants to look busy. Claire truly laughed for the first time that day. Jonah laughed too, then casually said, Last weekend going back to Savannah, he read a whole stack of papers in the car too. Miss Langley slept most of the way. Claire went still. Last weekend, Jonah looked up. He realized immediately. Adrian had told her he was in New York for work. Jonah set the cloth down slowly. I thought you knew. Claire felt the concrete beneath her feet tilt a little. Both families? Jonah did not answer directly, but his eyes did. After a while, he sighed. I don't want to betray Mr. Adrian. He isn't a bad man. Everyone says that before the worst truth comes out. Jonah looked toward the hotel door. Men raised in houses like that often learn to put love in one room and duty in another. They call that maturity, but it doesn't make it right. Claire left the parking area with cold hands. For the first time, Victoria was no longer work. She was another room, one with the lights on. Maya helped Claire look through everything like a bartender, investigating a murder with a martini glass and an office computer. They sat in the staff break room until nearly midnight, the laptop screen glowing amid the smell of old coffee and floor cleaner. Claire did not want to do it, but Maya said, You don't need evidence to know you're hurt, but evidence helps you stop calling your pain imaginary. They searched press photographs from the past 6 months, society articles, event schedules, media email. Adrian and Victoria had appeared beside each other more often than Claire had known. A fund dinner in Savannah, a financial conference in Charleston, a gallery opening in Atlanta, a scholarship ceremony. One article called them the next generation of Southern finance. Elena had said in an interview, Adrian has always been wise enough to understand legacy, and those who share that understanding will naturally stand beside him. Those who understood legacy would naturally stand beside him. Claire read the sentence 3 times. Maya found an email from Elena to the family's media team that had been mistakenly forwarded in a working thread with the hotel. No mention of personal attachments not approved by family office. No mention of personal attachments not approved by the family office. Claire stared at the phrase, personal attachments, until it no longer looked like English. She was not a woman. She was an unapproved risk. His family knew she existed. They were not surprised. They were simply managing her. Maya sat silently beside her, not saying, I told you so, That made Claire want to cry more. "Does he know?" Claire asked, her voice almost gone. Maya looked at her. "Do you want the true answer, or the answer that will help you sleep?" Claire closed the laptop. "I don't know anymore." On the night of the gala, the Bellamy ballroom shone so brightly that everything inside seemed forgiven before it could be judged. White orchids flowed in soft lines across the tables. Crystal glasses caught the light. A string quartet played softly. Cameras waited near the red carpet. Claire wore her black staff suit, hair pinned tight, headset at her ear, pale lipstick, empty ring finger. The ring was locked inside her purse in the staff room, because some part of her had brought it without understanding what she intended to do. When Adrian entered with Alina and Victoria, the entire room turned toward them like sunflowers turning toward the sun. Alina placed a hand on her son's arm. Victoria stood on his other side, beautiful, calm, fitting perfectly into the frame. Adrian saw Claire at the edge of the room. His eyes hurt, truly hurt, but his feet still carried him onto the red carpet. Cameras flashed. Adrian, Victoria this way. Mrs. Whitmore over here. One more together. Claire stood in her headset, her voice still calm. Cue string quartet in 30 seconds. Table 12 needs water. Move the press line left. She was making Adrian's night perfect while she herself was being erased from it. No one cursed at her. No one expelled her. No one made a scene. Humiliation at this level did not need noise. It only needed to make a woman stand in the correct backstage role in the room, where her fiancé was being photographed beside another woman. For the first 2 hours, Claire worked like a polished machine. She fixed a crooked floral arrangement, swapped out a backup microphone, handled a major donor complaining that the wine was not cold enough, comforted a new server who nearly cried after Alina glanced at her for dropping a napkin. She moved through people who were calling Adrian and Victoria by name together as if they were a symbol, heard Alina's laughter, heard the camera flashes, heard her own name occasionally called through the radio like a command. "Claire, table 5 needs another chair." "Claire, press wants a separate family shot of the Whitmores." "Ray, Miss Langley is asking where the powder room is." She had become the coordinator of her own erasure. And what frightened her most was that she was still very good at it. Alina found Claire in the side hallway after cocktail hour. She stood beneath the yellow light in no hurry, holding a white envelope. "Miss Dawson," she said. Claire removed one side of her headset. "Do you need something for the program?" Alina smiled. "I think we both know this is no longer about the program." Claire was silent. Alina held out the envelope. Adrian can sometimes be led by his emotion. It is an admirable quality in private life, but dangerous within larger structures. Marriage in our family is not only a matter of love. It concerns legacy, stability, responsibility to many people. Claire looked at the envelope and did not take it. What is inside? A simple non-disclosure agreement and a compensation figure large enough for you to step away from this situation without further injury. Claire laughed very softly, because if she did not laugh, she would shake. "You think money makes this kinder?" Alina tilted her head. "I think clarity makes this kinder. Adrian will survive disappointment. This family cannot survive humiliation." "Am I the humiliation?" "The humiliation is an intelligent woman not knowing when to leave a room that was never prepared for her." Claire finally took the envelope, not because she accepted, but because she understood at once that it was evidence. Alina looked at her with something almost like pity. "You have qualities, Claire, but qualities are not the same as suitability." The sentence went into Claire so deeply that she could not answer. When Alina left, Claire remained in the side hallway, the envelope in her hand. And for the first time, she saw the shape of the darkness Adrian had called protection. It was not an accidental shadow. It was an architecture. His mother stood guarding the door. The media team swept the floor. Victoria sat at the proper table. Jonah drove between the rooms. Adrian, the man who had given Claire the truest ring in a room no one saw, had called her absence strategy. Victoria told the coldest truth in the auxiliary dressing room, where Claire had gone to breathe after her encounter with Alina. She was bracing her hands on the sink, looking at herself in the mirror when the door opened. Victoria stepped in, removing one earring to adjust the clasp. The two women looked at each other through the mirror. Victoria did not seem as surprised as Claire had expected. She was only silent for a few seconds before saying, "It's you, isn't it?" Claire turned. "What do you know?" Victoria closed the door. "I know there is a woman. I didn't know it was you." Claire felt her heart slow. "Did you know he proposed to me?" For the first time, Victoria's face truly changed. No, there was no smugness, no victory, only a heavy silence. "I'm sorry," Victoria said, and the difficult thing was that she seemed sincere. Claire laughed bitterly. "Don't." Victoria looked into the mirror and fixed her earring with very steady hands. "My family and his have built a great many things around us. I am not entirely innocent. I stand in those photographs because standing there benefits me, but I did not know about the ring." "Do you love him?" Claire asked, though she did not know which answer she wanted. Victoria was silent for a while. "I understand him. Perhaps in our world many people mistake that for love." Then she looked at Claire. "He may love you. I believe he does. But he still always chooses the room where I am allowed to stand beside him." There was no malice in the sentence, and that was what made it so cruel. Claire realized Victoria had not stolen Adrian. Victoria was simply living proof of the world Adrian chose whenever the door opened and the cameras came on. The problem was not the other woman. The problem was that Adrian wanted Claire's love in the dark and Victoria's approval in the light. Victoria washed her hands, dried them with a paper towel, then added in a lower voice, "Do you know the worst part? If you disappear tonight, everyone will call you sensible. If you stay, they will call you disruptive. Both choices serve them." Claire looked at the woman she was supposed to hate and saw another shadow of herself. Someone allowed to stand beside Adrian, but also positioned like a family object. Victoria had light, but that light was not exactly freedom. It was only a more luxurious kind of cage. Claire pulled Adrian out onto the balcony behind the ballroom just before the main speech. Outside, Atlanta was cold, the sound of traffic far below distant and small. He saw the non-disclosure envelope in her hand, and his face went pale. "Claire, I didn't know my mother would do that. But you knew she could." He ran a hand through his hair, the first crack in his perfection that night. "I swear to you, the ring is real. I love you. I was going to tell them after tonight." "After tonight," Claire repeated it. "Do you hear yourself? You always need me to disappear for just one more night. It isn't disappearing. Then what is it? Where am I standing? I'm wearing a headset while my fiancé gets photographed beside another woman. And your mother just offered me money to stay silent. What do you call that position?" Adrian stepped closer. "I'm trying to keep everything from exploding." "Everything for whom?" He was silent. She saw his eyes fill, and the most painful truth was that she still loved him. She loved the man standing in front of her, the man who remembered her headaches, who laughed when he burned garlic, who had once said he was exhausted by his own last name. But she also saw that this man could not carry their love out of her apartment without asking permission from Legacy. "Just tonight," Adrian said. "I'm begging you. After the gala, I'll fix everything." Claire looked through the glass doors into the ballroom, where Victoria sat at the central table. Elena laughed with guests, and the Whitmore name glowed on the backdrop. "You don't need me silent to fix it. You need me silent so your night doesn't look bad." Adrian looked as if she had struck him. "Do you think I'm that much of a coward?" Claire answered very quietly. "I think you are that afraid." That silenced them both because it was truer than an accusation. Adrian placed his hands on the railing and lowered his head. "You don't understand what it feels like to be raised your whole life to become a symbol." "Maybe I don't," Claire swallowed, "but I understand what it feels like to spend your whole life backstage for other people's symbols." He looked at her. "I don't want you backstage, but you keep leaving me there. I'll change." "No, you'll change after you have nothing left to lose." "That isn't a choice. That's cleanup." Adrian stepped closer, his voice nearly breaking. "Don't do anything tonight. I'm begging you." And that was when Claire understood he was not begging to keep her. He was begging to keep the room. When Adrian went on stage to speak about legacy, trust, transparency, Claire stood beneath the lights beside a column of white orchids and heard each word like a polished knife. "Legacy, trust, transparency." He spoke smoothly, warmly, and the room listened. Claire looked at him and remembered the night of the proposal, remembered his trembling hand, remembered the ring on her finger during those first 10 minutes when she still believed it would open a door. Then she left her staff position. Maya saw her from the bar. Claire went into the staff room, opened her purse, and took out the ring box. She did not put it on. She held the ring in her palm, along with Elena's white envelope. When Adrian finished his speech, applause rose. Claire walked across the ballroom. At first, no one noticed, because staff moving through the room was normal. Then she came too close to the central table, carrying no tray, her headset out of place, her head not lowered. Elena saw her first. Her face turned a shade paler. Victoria looked up, silent. Adrian was still on stage, not yet having stepped down. Claire placed the ring, and the non-disclosure envelope on the table in front of him when he reached his family. The entire table went still. People nearby turned their heads. The cameras had not fully shut off. Claire heard Maya inhale from across the room. "You proposed to me in a room with no witnesses," Claire said, not loudly, but clearly enough for everyone around the table to hear. "Tonight I'm returning it in a room full of everyone you're afraid of." Adrian looked at the ring, his face breaking open. "Claire, please." Elena rose. "Miss Dawson, this is not the place." Claire turned to her. "You're right. This was never the place for me. That is what you have been trying to say in much more polite ways." Then she looked at Adrian. "I will not let my life become something you explain after you finally get brave enough." Adrian reached toward her but did not touch her. Perhaps he knew that if he touched her, it would make everything worse. Victoria sat still, her eyes fixed on the ring. In that moment, Adrian's two worlds finally lay on the same table. Evidence of the promise and evidence of the erasure. Claire did not need to explain more. She did not need to cry. The room had seen enough. Elena recovered her voice first. "You're humiliating yourself." Claire looked at her. "No, I'm just no longer doing it for everyone else." Then she turned away. She did not run. She did not cry. She did not look at Adrian again. She walked past the table she had arranged herself, past the white orchids, past the string quartet now losing rhythm because no one knew whether to keep playing, past wealthy faces that for once did not know where to pretend to look. Maya removed her apron behind the bar and followed her into the hallway without asking. When the ballroom doors closed behind them, Claire finally felt her legs shaking. Maya stood beside her and did not hug her immediately. She only said, "You put it in the right place." Claire looked at her empty hand. "I don't feel lighter." Maya answered no, because this isn't relief. It's survival. The scandal afterward did not look fair. The Whitmore family controlled the narrative as quickly as they controlled everything else. A short statement called Claire a former staff member causing an unfortunate disturbance. A few society blogs wrote that she was an unstable former employee who had a personal relationship with Adrian and tried to humiliate a wealthy family for attention. Some people called her a gold digger. Some said that if Adrian had really proposed, why were there no photos? That question hurt because the very fact that he had made sure she had no photos now became evidence against her. The Bellamy placed Claire on temporary leave out of fear that VIP clients might cancel. The hotel manager, Mr. Harlan, called her into his office with a sorrowful expression, practiced enough not to accept responsibility. "Claire, you know I respect you," he said, "but the Bellamy survives on client trust." Claire sat straight, her hands resting on her knees. "Did I ruin the event? It's not only about the event." The lights came up on time. The press entered through the correct door. The VIPs were seated at the right table. The stage ran on schedule. "I did my job," Harlan sighed. "Yes, but you also brought your private life into a professional space." Claire laughed very softly. "My private life was handed to me by the client's family in a non-disclosure envelope in your hotel's side hallway." Harlan went silent. He knew. Perhaps he had heard. Perhaps Elena had called first. In the end, he only said, "Temporary leave will be good for you." Claire stood. "No, it will be good for the hotel." Maya helped her pack her things from the small office behind the ballroom. "I can smash a few bottles if you want," Maya said. Claire gave one short laugh and then cried. For the first time since the gala. It was not a beautiful cry. She sat down in the chair, holding a box with a few notebooks, her employee badge, a backup pair of shoes, and cried because she had lost her job, lost the man she loved, lost even the version of herself that had once believed if she performed well enough, stood steady enough, behaved properly enough, the world would not be able to push her out. Maya sat beside her, letting their shoulders touch. "I hate him," Maya said. Claire wiped her face. I know, that's the worst part." Maya looked at her. "No, the worst part is that he knew you wouldn't hate him, so he let you hurt longer." Adrian called constantly, came to her apartment door, sent long messages. "You made it harder." "I was going to tell them. You didn't trust me enough to let me fix it." This was his final counterattack, perhaps unintentional but still cruel, turning her act of preserving her dignity into the reason he had lost a future he had never been brave enough to build. One night, he stood outside her apartment in light rain, his dark coat wet at the shoulders, looking nothing like the man at the gala. Claire looked through the peephole, her hand on the lock. She wanted to open the door. Her whole body wanted to open it. She remembered him crying when he proposed, remembered him sleeping on her sofa, remembered the way he closed his eyes when she rubbed his temples after a long day. People do not stop loving someone just because they finally see their cowardice. Sometimes seeing it makes the love hurt even more, because it no longer has an illusion to hide inside. "Claire," he said through the door, "I know you can hear me." She did not answer. "I was wrong, but you were wrong too, doing that in front of everyone. You gave them a reason to call you." He stopped. Claire closed her eyes. He did not finish the sentence, but she heard it. "Call you the problem. Call you disruptive. Call you badly timed." Adrian knocked lightly on the door. "I need you to open the door so we can talk like people who love each other." Claire rested her forehead against the wood. "People who love each other don't hide each other behind doors," she said, quietly enough for only herself to hear. She did not open it. The next morning, a bouquet of white flowers lay outside her door. No card. Peonies. The flowers from the proposal. She left them there until noon, when the petals began to droop, then carried them down to the trash. Her hands shook as she let go of the bouquet, as if she were throwing away part of her own body. Denise sat beside Claire on the sofa one evening, her hand resting on her daughter's knee. "The person who loves you should not need a scandal before he is willing to say your name," she said. Claire looked at the phone, vibrating silently. "But what if he changes now?" Denise did not answer right away. "Then he'll have to live with the fact that you are no longer standing in the same place to receive that change." Claire turned toward her mother. "Do you think I'm being too cruel?" Denise looked at her daughter for a long time. "No, I think this is the first time you are not being cruel to yourself." An email from Victoria arrived 2 days later, very short. "You were not the embarrassment. The secret was." Claire read that sentence many times. It did not heal her, but it named the wound correctly. Victoria did not write more, did not offer a long apology, did not try to become a friend, did not turn herself into a heroic ally. Just one sentence, and sometimes one accurate sentence from someone standing inside the other room, carries more weight than 100 explanations from the person who once said he loved you. A few months later, Claire left the Bellamy. The Grand Hotel did not fire her in any dramatic scene. It simply stretched her temporary leave until she understood that returning would mean living in hallways where everyone remembered her as a scandal. She took a job at a smaller event company, less glamorous, one that specialized in garden weddings, family parties, anniversaries without red carpets. The salary was lower, the office smaller, the flowers not flown in from the Netherlands. But when the owner heard the story, she only said, "Here, if the bride wants to show off her ring, we turn on more lights for her." Claire smiled, and the smile hurt like a muscle being used again after an injury. In her first days there, she still flinched when her phone showed news about the Whitmore. Adrian eventually publicly acknowledged that he had been secretly engaged and that his family had interfered. He stepped away from the family firm for a while, or so the media said. Elena did not appear at several events. Victoria was photographed alone in New York, her face calm as if she had never sat beside a ring being returned in front of the whole world. Some people online began defending Claire. Others still called her opportunistic. Truth, once brought into the light, does not automatically become justice. It only becomes something people can argue about. Claire learned that by no longer reading comments. Adrian came to see Claire outside her new office on a lightly rainy afternoon, without a driver, without a perfect suit. His eyes tired. He looked more real. Or maybe he simply looked like a man who had lost something he had never believed he could lose. "I told the truth," he said. "I know it was too late, but I told it. I want to begin again." Claire looked at the man she had once dreamed would stand before her exactly like this, not hiding, not evading, and felt a pain so calm it almost frightened her. "I used to want to hear that so badly I thought I could forgive anything if you said it one day." Adrian stepped closer. "I still love you. I know." For 1 second that gave him hope. Claire looked at her bare left hand. "But I no longer want to be loved in a way that makes me hide my left hand." Adrian closed his eyes. "I'm not that man anymore." "Maybe," Claire breathed in, "but in the moment when you needed to choose me while you still had me in the dark, you chose the brighter room." "I was afraid." "I know. I was wrong. I know." "Then why can't?" He stopped, unable to finish. Claire looked at him with all the love still left in her. And that love made her answer more brutal. "Because I had to step into the light by myself. Only afterward did you realize where I was standing. I don't want to spend my life as evidence that helped you grow." Adrian lowered his head. Rain fell on his shoulders. There was no shouting, no final embrace. He stood in the rain for a long time after she went inside the office. Claire did not turn back to look through the glass. though her whole body wanted to. That night she went home and opened her sock drawer. The place where the velvet box had once been was empty. She put a new pair of socks there, ordinary light gray. It was such a small act that no one but her would understand. But when the drawer closed, for the first time, the sound of wood no longer felt like a door locked from the outside. It was only a drawer. The final scene was not her wedding. Real life rarely repays people with symbols that clean. It was a small backyard wedding for an ordinary couple. 2 elementary school teachers, a modest budget, rented wooden chairs, white daisies, a cake made by the bride's aunt. Claire stood beneath an oak tree, clipboard in hand, a light breeze stirring the tablecloths. The young bride lifted her hand to show her ring to her friends, not because the stone was large, but because being seen in her happiness required no permission. Everyone laughed, touched her hand, congratulated her. No one told her to put it away. No one said the timing was wrong. No one turned her joy into a public relations risk. Claire raised her hand to her empty ring finger and touched it lightly. There was no ring anymore, but there was also no drawer that had to hide. She still hurt in ways that did not show up on her work calendar. Hurt when she saw a high-rise hotel in the city. Hurt when Adrian's name appeared in the news. Hurt when a groom knelt and the crowd applauded. But pain was no longer evidence that she had been wrong. It was only what remained of a love that had been real, but had not had enough light to live. When the ceremony began, Claire stepped out into the yard, no longer through the staff path at the back, but down the aisle between the rows of chairs. Beneath warm afternoon light, radio in hand, back straight. She had once thought a proposal was the moment a woman was chosen. Now she understood that a proposal without light was only a beautiful ring placed in the dark, and she had returned that darkness before it had the chance to call itself home.